The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
Here on the floor in Fargo, day 3 of this marathon that is Fargo 2018. Jason Brown along with Executive Director of USA Wrestling, Rich Bender. Been a great year for USA Wrestling off a great 2017. We got a really good set of teams going overseas for where our cadets just came back. The juniors and seniors are looking at titles to defend. And, what's been the mood in the office in Colorado Springs these past 365 days?
Well, certainly it's fun times to be around Team USA and USA Wrestling, and obviously incredibly grateful for the success we've had as a result of the thousands of volunteers that believe so passionately in American wrestling. It's great times to be involved.
This event, while it may not necessarily be Fargo, it's been in other places before. It's settled here with both styles in 96, but you started as an events intern, and this was one of the events that you really had to get your teeth wet or your feet wet on and gnash those teeth. What do you first remember about working this event the first time?
Well, funny story. I came here as our events manager when the Fargo Dome was nothing but a hole in the ground. Literally, they had just begun to dig the footings for the building, and we decided to move the event here. And I guess the memory from that trip, I came in February, and the gentleman that was my host that showed me around Fargo and North Dakota State University never shut his car off for 2 days. We go in and have lunch, and he kept his car running because it was so cold here. But really a great place for this event. I mean, all the infrastructure is obviously in place here to provide the athletes with the best possible experience to compete in what we think is the best tournament on the planet.
And this thing has evolved. First year I came, 1999, 20 years ago. I think I've mentioned that on every show so far from here. But then it was 4 tournaments. Now we've got 6 tournaments, robust. The women's numbers are going up. The numbers for freestyle have been up this year. Not quite record-breaking, but really close to it. And what do you think is the reason that numbers are going up on the men's side, and why there's been such a great growth on the women's side as well?
Well, I think we've enjoyed a bump in relevancy, and I think that's a result of our state chapters working really hard to promote this event and teach one of their athletes the importance of making their state team. And I think the college coaches have continued to put a lot of relevancy on this tournament and using it as a great indicator for determining where they want to make their investments in their teams. So I think it's obviously the success of Team USA has helped too. I think I can't remember a time where we were as deep as we've been at the age group levels. Obviously, cadets coming off a great performance last week overseas, and the junior team looks great. Got our program now, I think, on the right trajectory. So I think it's there's a lot of reasons for increased participation, but I think those are some of them.
One of the cool things I was talking to Willie about yesterday is how the high school kids, like the cadet and junior worlds, have created stars for high school kids that they're not professional athletes yet, but they're I can go watch Dayton Fix wrestle, and you put events here, the wrestle-offs here. I always love when a best of 3 series is here. How nerve-wracking is it from an executive director standpoint? But okay, we're going to put this in Fargo.
Well, it's not very nerve-wracking for me. It might be kind of nerve-wracking for Pete Isaiah, who has to make it all work. But it's really great to see yesterday walking around the Fargo Dome. Kind of wandered behind Derek Fix a little bit, or Dayton Fix, and to see him walk around like a rock star here amongst really his peers. I mean, just was eligible to wrestle here a year ago, and I think it's great to see, and that's a result of success at the age group level. Really, part of our mission, as you know, at USA Wrestling is to create heroes, and when athletes win world titles when they're 15 and 16 years old, it certainly gives us a platform to promote those guys and girls, and it's really exciting to see.
So you were around in '95, correct? With that last world title?
Yeah, I was actually started in 1988. If we're keeping, but the '95 World Championships was a test event for the Olympic Games in '96, and I had the pleasure of serving as the competition manager for both the '95 World Championships and the Olympic Games. But obviously had great significance to the fact that going into Olympic Games having our team beat Iran and Russia and in such a historical manner was exciting. But I'll tell you, I don't think in my 30 years at USA Wrestling I've been as excited as when Kyle Snyder took down Sadulayev there with 12 seconds left, and Sadulayev hung his head. Really, really exciting time for American wrestling for sure.
We just finished up a Final X series. It ran 3 straight weekends. Lincoln State College, Bethlehem. I was going to reserve judgment until I'd actually see it, and I had the opportunity to be at all 3. And I came out of it going, I like it. Now, obviously, there's some tweaks, not wholesale changes, but some tweaks. But what was your general feeling on, one, how it was received by the administration, how it was received by the athletes, and how do you think the fans reacted?
Well, I think, when we first made the decision to implement this process, we knew it was going to be an investment. We knew it was an investment in American wrestling, an opportunity for us to really expose wrestling in the United States to our team. And what I mean by that is, it's not by accident that we went into 3 really college-centric locations at the University of Nebraska, at State College, and then at Lehigh, and with the hope that we can expose our Olympic athletes to the college market. And I think we were successful there. I think over 7,000 people saw in person the best wrestlers in the United States compete for a spot on Team USA. And I think, there were some challenges, right? We weren't used to doing our trials process that way, right? It put a pressure on our clubs and our RTCs to now support 4 events, not 1. If you incorporate the mini tournament into that process. So certainly those are things that we're gonna investigate and look at. But overall, I think it was a roaring success for wrestling and USA Wrestling and the exposure of Team USA.
With the being part of the USAC and the Olympic family, what were the heads over at the USOC looking at? Were they looking at USA Wrestling going, okay, this process is different? I mean, how closely were they looking at the actions to see, well, can other sports kind of mimic that process, that procedure? Maybe not obviously as nuanced as wrestling is, but what was their interest in it?
Well, certainly the USOC was very supportive. Loved the idea of creating additional content and creating opportunities for the American public to see Olympic-style wrestling. So they were incredibly supportive. They continue to be a great partner for us. And, I think there's been a lot of conversations about how we can maybe implement some of these processes with other sports. So certainly they've been very supportive of the idea and the process.
What are some things, I guess, back to the athlete, what was the athlete's perspective? I mean, some of them are a little more outspoken, and, our clubs are split, but, some athletes are more outspoken than others. But what was the general feeling? Because the athletes, when they have a gripe, they're going to call you, they're going to call Cody, they're going to take it up the flagpole.
Well, we have a meeting actually Tuesday in Colorado Springs as we kick off or actually wind down our first week at camp. Where we're gonna provide them the athletes with an opportunity for input, but it's been overwhelmingly positive on the athlete side. I think if you said you were there, and those people that were able to watch in person, we really highlighted the athletes, gave them an opportunity and a stage to promote their own brands, and really, I know on the women's side it was incredibly positive for them. It exposed women's wrestling to a different audience. I heard numerous thoughts on people who said, I was a traditional college wrestling fan, or I watched Team USA, or I watched the men's freestyle team. I had no idea that women's wrestling was to this level technically, and I think it was a great opportunity for that. And I think we'll talk about how we can use the popularity of freestyle to try to also bring up Greco, and so it's been really positive. The athletes have been incredibly supportive and grateful for the process, so I think it's been really good.
One of the things I liked about the process, one, the challenge tournament was 90 minutes from my house. That's always a plus when you can go home at the end of a day and sleep in your own bed, kind of like here now. But the fact is that Northern Plains and the challenge tournament were separate events, separate ticketed events, so it wasn't like it was all this spillover from the Northern Plains. The seats were packed, and I think it seated 1,900 in that gym, and it felt like an intimate tournament. I love that aspect of it. It wasn't, you don't have to sit all day in a gym and then wait. Okay, and then here are the good matches. I like how the challenge tournament, to me, was my favorite part of the whole process.
Well, Jason, you being there, I mean, that was a pleasant surprise for us that the mini tournament was so well attended. And I think it speaks to where we are with American wrestling right now. Is, even there's interest around just our top athletes. So, and not that those aren't top athletes, but when you pull out our world medalists and still can draw that kind of attention to what's going on at Team USA, I think it's fantastic. So it was a great process, I think, and one that I think will only get better.
And one thing in Minnesota, and there's the Storm guys, of course the local fan base helps. Now, locations in the future, they're talking. I think the one drawback I had was, as somebody who was going to attend all three or work all three, getting to Lincoln, I was lucky. I got a nonstop out of Minneapolis, but everything usually involves a connection. One of my first thoughts was, hey, the Palestra in Philadelphia. It's a smaller college venue. It's got a lot of history. The name means House of Wrestling, but are we looking at maybe fan centers a little bit closer to population centers versus, getting to State College in Bethlehem is not the easiest thing?
Well, certainly our number one priority when we first started the process was to give us an opportunity to elevate our athletes. And that time frame from when we have the final matchup set until they actually take place, we're really focused on trying to promote those matchups and create interest. Now, I think there's also part of this discussion is going to be how, where do we want to strategically place the events? Obviously, we can't forget about wrestling in the West. We talked about Fresno being a potential suitor of a Final X type event. Obviously, the Midwest continues to be a heartbeat for our sport, so I think it's important for us to provide that opportunity for people to drive and see that stuff. And certainly, places like the Palestra have great histories within USA Wrestling and our World Team Trials there for many years, and obviously huge support for wrestling. So, yeah, I mean, it's a combination of things that we're going to try to not only go into centers of interest around who makes the team. I mean, it wasn't by accident that James Green and Jordan Burroughs wrestled at Lincoln, Nebraska. So, I mean, obviously we're gonna lose sight of that. We want to play to our strengths, right? We want to play to where we know we have a built-in fan base and expose them to the international style of wrestling. And obviously that's gonna, we're gonna pay attention to the college centers and those heartbeats where the sport is really strong.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. First time listening? Well, you can change that by going to matttalkonline.com/getshorttime to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or listen on your favorite podcatcher at matttalkonline.com/listen.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to matttalkonline.com.